Y'all, Talon here. Today we're going to be going over the top teams from the Latin American International Championship. I have EV spreads for all of these teams, all of the top 16 teams, as well as a few extending into the top 32. Not all of it, obviously 16, double as much as top 32. Didn't have time to make them all, but hopefully this is a good resource for y'all to test any of these teams on the ladder before Sacramento or Toronto regionals or the last European regional. Not entirely sure what that is, but maybe I save you some time. If you appreciate that resource, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and let's get into a breakdown of these teams. Not going to go into a lot of detail into the spreads or the Pokemon in general. Let me know if I made any mistakes in the comments. Sometimes I make a mistake on like a nature or something, like for example a mild nature instead of a modest nature. But yeah, overall these teams are very strong. I just threw together some EV spreads for the players that hadn't shared their teams publicly. Some had. Marco, I don't believe, shared the team EV spreads from the last regional that he got second at, but overall it's a strong team. If you're not familiar with it at this point, it is a team centered around the Ursaluna, Incineroar, Porygon 2, and Torkoal mode. A very potent Trick Room mode. Essentially, you'll just lead the Incineroar Parting Shot into your Ursaluna while you Trick Room with your Porygon 2 and then try and sweep under Trick Room. However, it does have some really cool mix-up. You have an Eject Backpack Torkoal. If your opponent leads Intimidate, you can lead that next to the Jumpluff. Get the Sun up, Eject Pack will activate, and then you'll switch out the Torkoal immediately into the Ursaluna or sometimes the Charizard. The Charizard is Choice Specs, Solar Power, Heat Wave, and Overheat and Weather Ball, so very strong fire attacks in the Sun, and then Dragon Pulse to hit something like a Dragonite, or really just any Dragon type that would resist your fire type moves and answer back with a strong hit. The most annoying Pokemon on the team for most people is the Jumpluff, which can do a lot of really annoying things. You don't have to lead the Torkoal to get the Sun up. You can lead Charizard, Jumpluff against lower teams, go for Sunny Day. Heat Wave, take some knockouts. You also have Sleep Powder as a get out of jail free card 75% of the time against a lot of teams. You have Tailwind to set up the Charizard or the Ursaluna against slower Pokemon. The Ursaluna on this team is running pretty fast, 95 speed is what I have it at here. Basically that's just outspeeding max speed Sneasler, which is an important metric to hit. You could outspeed something like a Dragapult, which hits 194. I'm not sure if you can outspeed a Jolly Dragapult. No, it looks like you can't, because I think that hits 214, so you need to go Jolly. But regardless, let's get that back into the right slot. Yeah, very fast Ursaluna can function in or out of Trick Room. Now let's go into Torvi's team. This is actually based on a Japanese team. Marco's was too, but Japanese team builders definitely driving the weather meta forward. We have a Pelipper Archaludon team. Fighting Terra on the Archaludon is interesting. Basically, you have the body press that can get boosted up. The only way to self-activate that is Scale Shot in this team, or I guess Earthquake, but that's generally not super advisable. But yeah, aside of that, a pretty standard Archaludon. This one's running pretty quick to outspeed other Dragonite, and basically, I think that's starting to be an important metric to hit, just the 132, 133 benchmark, because there are so many Scale Shot Dragonite in the meta. Definitely something to be looking at. We also have a very fast Ursaluna that can function in Tailwind. This Dragonite set is very interesting. You go for Scale Shot first, and then you can set up Tailwind while your Ursaluna has come in, and then you go for Flying type. No, the Dragonite has Flying type, so you can go for Earthquakes unimpeded, or just go for really strong, fast Facades and Headlong Rushes. This is a max speed Ursaluna. Once again, you could go Jolly if you wanted to outspeed Adamant Dragapult, and I think Basculegion, you might be outspeeding that. Actually, I think Basculegion hits 215 with Jolly's Choice Scarf, so you wouldn't even be able to outspeed that with the Ursaluna, which is worth noting. Aside of that, there's another interesting set on the Gholdengo. It is Choice Scarf. That's really strong against Sneasler teams, like just being able to outspeed a Sneasler, knock down to Focus Sash, and then knock it out with the next Make It Rain is very cool. I guess you wouldn't knock it down to Focus Sash with the Make It Rain unboosted, but you will get a 2-hit KO on them if they're not Psychic Seed, which is pretty cool. Aside of that, there's a Sinistra, which benefits both the really mainly the Archaludon, but also the Dragonite. We saw Torviv basically take a little bit of chip on the Dragonite, go into the Sinistra, and heal up back to up to multi-scale to take some hit. I think it was the Japanese player Elizabeth who built this team. I'm not sure which player built Marco's, but there's definitely been some major changes to make these teams function a little bit better in best of 3, as they were originally best of 1 ladder teams. But congrats to both of them on the finals appearance. Rooting for an exciting finals. Next up, we have Ashton Cox's LAIC team. We'll start to go a little bit quicker, but this is a pretty standard team overall. The Sneasler, Rillaboom, Dondozo are all fairly standard stats outside of the Terra Flying on Dondozo. Not entirely sure what that's for. Maybe taking less from close combat from Sneasler. Ground type moves, I guess, from Ursaluna, but they're probably going for Facade anyway, so not entirely sure what the purpose of that is. And then Electabuzz, which is a Terra Grass set. Not sure what's going on there, but we're running a pretty fast one. I actually did extract these EV spreads from Ashton's rental code that he shared online. Definitely check him out on Twitter. But yeah, overall, Helping Hand is really cool next to the Gholdengo, which is a choice spec set. You can go for really strong spread Make It Rains or Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleams. That's a really cool set. As well as the Kommo in the, I think it was against Alex in top 8. In game 3, he basically just set up the Kommo with the Clangorous Soul, got the Throat Spray boost, so he was +1 in all stats and then +2 in special attack, and then just started going for reads with Helping Hand, Clanging Scales, even in front of a bulky Gholdengo that was doing a whole lot of damage. It wasn't going to 2-hit KO, but read a switch and went for the next Helping Hand Clanging Scales, so overall a cool set. Terra Fire Flamethrower does a lot of damage. It actually one-hit KOs most Assault Vest Rillaboom, Amoonguss, and then Steel types like Gholdengo, which can otherwise tank your your Dragon type coverage move in Clanging Scales. This one's running pretty fast. Ashton didn't opt to outspeed opposing timid Gholdengo, which I thought was kind of interesting because you do have the EVs to be able to do it. If you just go a little bit less HP, you can get to 150, which will outspeed Gholdengo. Won't be able to outspeed max speed our Chaldon, but just going to keep the EVs as they are. Also interesting that he went 196 HP. Not going to be benefiting from an additional HP of the Rillaboom's grassy terrain, but you will also take less damage from a burn if you do get burned, or a Sandstream from things like Tyranitar. So I'd probably adjust this EV spread a little bit. Maybe there's something extremely precise that Ashton was aiming to do, and he just didn't have the EV spreads to hit the 176 benchmark or the 150 benchmark. But yeah, that's just the first thing that comes to mind when I see this spread. It's a really cool run from Ashton. This is probably my favorite team to come out of the weekend. Just visually, it looks really cool. And then we'll move into another cool team, won by Renzo Navarro. We have the Baxcalibur, Rillaboom, Basculegion, and King Gambit. This is very similar to a team that I think Juan Garcia was doing really well with in the European regional circuit, but shifted the Dondozo that's usually on the team for a Choice Scarf Basculegion, a bit more offensive of a take. And I'm not sure if Juan was actually coaching or protect on the Sneasler, but definitely makes a lot of sense. I think he actually was coaching. I'm just not sure if he was fake out, but the coaching plus the Baxcalibur is a strong combination. The Scale Shot, obviously, you lose a little bit of defensive prowess when you go for the Scale Shot, but the coaching can offset that defense drop immediately. This is really cool because Baxcalibur naturally is faster than Dragonite, so they have to be running Jolly to outspeed you, and they have to go for a Terra. Basically, if they Baxcalibur on the field basically forces the Dragonite to go for a Terastallization, and they're usually Terra Fairy or Terra Steel. So you can cover that with an Ice Shard and then a Dire Claw or a Close Combat if you read the Dragonite to go for that, and just knock it out with the Sneasler on the field. So really cool Pokemon. Loaded Ice, Ice Cold Spear, and Scale Shot is a very potent combination. Then the Rillaboom has a bit of a deviation. I think it was originally Assault Vest on Juan's team. But here we have Miracle Seed, Woodhammer, Grassy Glide, and then Taunt. So Taunt's really cool. You can stop Trick Room teams a little bit more stably, or Follow Me, or just any setup move, which is a cool aspect. And then obviously the Miracle Seed Woodhammer is just hitting for crazy damage. Grassy Glide as well. Basculegion's picking up in usage, and a lot of them are EV to just barely take a Grassy Glide from a Assault Vest Rillaboom, but this will not take a Miracle Seed Grassy Glide, so that's a cool aspect there. Moving into Basculegion, I believe it was the Jolly one we saw on stream, because at +1, basically he was playing against a Dragonite that had a Scale Shot off, and he outsped it. So the speed interaction between Dragonite is basically, if the Dragonite is running Adamant, then you have to run Jolly on the Baxcalibur to be able to outspeed it. As you can see, Adamant Baxcalibur hits 130, and Dragonite hits 132. So yeah, I'm assuming this is Jolly. There could be some bulk, basically just going like 133 or 134 and then getting some EV spreads here to live a Grassy Glide, but just going to keep it basic here just because the Basculegions are so common. You do, in some endgames, just want to be the faster of the two. Next up, we have a fairly standard Terra Fairy Covert Cloak, Quiver Dance, Volcarona. There's some teams run Leftover, some run Covert Cloak to be able to dodge Fake Out and Dire Claw, Paralysis, or any status condition from Dire Claw. But going for Covert Cloak here for a little bit more consistency, but losing out on some of the longevity of the Grassy Terrain Leftovers combo, which can be very potent. Last up, we have a King Gambit, which is Assault Vest instead of a setup one. I do like that a lot. I think the setup King Gambit has been a little bit harder to get running with Sneasler as the number 1 Pokemon in the metagame. A lot of Terra Fairies popping up, so having the option to force those Terras or just prevent them from being able to go for that stably, since you can just Iron Head to cover for it, I think is very smart. And then yeah, just having a low kick to be able to hit opposing King Gambit, Incineroar, etc. is a smart option. So overall, I do like Renzo's team a lot. Congrats to the top 4. I think this might be his best finish. I think he might have a couple like regionals in LAIC. It wouldn't surprise me. He's been around for a bit, but definitely a huge statement performance on the international stage. Congrats to him for that. All right, going to move a little bit more quickly into the top 8 and the top 16. We have Daniel Reyes, a United States player who was able to take, I think this is Torviv's team from maybe, I think there's some terrestrialization changes, maybe some move set changes, but overall the same 6 that Torviv was able to get top 8 at Gdansk, so don't want to go into too much details. Very similar coaching, fake out Sneasler, where you can go for a fake out and just go right for a scale shot, or a setup move with one of your Pokemon, or go for coaching and attack while they go for a double protect or something. So a very difficult mind game to play. Coaching really strong with Dragonite and King Gambit, as well as Rillaboom. Honestly, a +1 high horsepower does a lot more to Gholdengos and Archaludon than you might think it would do. And then outside of that, we have Haze. Haze on the Dragonite to stop opposing setup, as well as Dondozo. Volcarona setup with the Quiver Dance. Here we have a Leftovers one instead of Covert Cloak. And Magmar kind of emerging as the most popular Follow Me Pokemon over Magmar was starting to take up a lot of space in the meta a little earlier on, but it feels like people are starting to centralize on Electabuzz just because of the value of the Electro-type coverage and speed, as well as Electroweb on some sets also being very strong. Now moving into Alex Gomez and Eric Rios' team. They both got top 8 at the regional, so definitely speaks to the strength of their team and their play as well. One of the best players, or 2 of the best players in the world, rather. Definitely a strong team building group there. Whoops, looks like I forgot to EV the Dragonite, but that is okay. Pretty easy spread. Most of these Dragonites are going to be running the max speed, max attack set. Just checking we have everything else right, but yeah, so they went for the choice of going for a Scale Shot Haze. We saw some Scale Shot Tailwind, as previously mentioned, but just going for consistency here. Not letting your opponents get their Pokemon set up and being able to steamroll your team. You have the Haze to stop that. Really, this is mostly a standard team. We have Double Fake Out, Rillaboom, and Incineroar, very standard sets. Electabuzz is a Thunderbolt Electroweb, which is a little non-standard. I think you could run a bit more speed on this to, in theory, you could actually just outspeed Charizard and Thunderbolt it against the Jump Left teams and kind of surprise them game 1, which could be pretty funny. But yeah, outside of that, we have a bulky Gholdengo with Citrus Berry, which is strong. Most of them are Life Orb, but having the additional bulk with the Grassy Terrain to heal you up and the Citrus Berry could really ruin people's game plans into Gholdengo. And then the last really interesting thing on the team is this Annihilape, which is Focus Sash, Taunt, and Coaching. We've seen some Safety Goggles Final Gambit over Taunt on the Annihilape, but it is interesting seeing how many people are experimenting with the item and the move choices on this Pokemon. I think a lot of people recognize at this point the Coaching is just such a strong move. It's really, even though Pokemon like Sneasler and Annihilape love having Protect, Coaching is just so strong that it's sometimes worth weakening, the strength of the Annihilape or the maneuverability of the Annihilape and the Sneasler in favor of having the ability to just run over your opponent's teams with a coached up Dragonite or Rillaboom. Congrats to Eric and Alex on a great performance here, probably catapulting them pretty high up on the European standards, although they both fell short of the auto invite of top 4. The points here are probably going to allow them to at least get travel award for the next events and continue to just get a bunch of points because they're very talented players. Next we have O's or Oliver Escalin's hyper offensive team. This is really based on the Hoj brothers team with the Sneasler, Indeedee, Talonflame, Ursaluna mode. Now we have the Electabuzz and the Dragonite, and this was a team that was popping up online a fair bit. This is a team that a lot of people knew about before the tournament, so it didn't come out of nowhere for people in the know, but definitely was able to accomplish a lot despite that. Basically, we have the Talonflame, Ursaluna, which can lead as a very immediate amount of pressure. You can take a knockout immediately with Blood Moon, Terra Normal, or a Hyper Voice to just chip things down. And then in the back, you usually have the Indeedee or the Sneasler. The Electabuzz and the Dragonite come in place of what was before a Dondozo and a Tatsugiri on the original team. The Electabuzz means you don't have to lead the Talonflame with the Ursaluna. You can just lead the Electabuzz, Ursaluna, and maybe get multiple Hyper Voices off as your opponent doesn't have a immediate way to knock out the Electabuzz in 2 hits. So you can go for potentially Electabuzz, Ursaluna, Follow Me, Hyper Voice 2 turns in a row, and then they knock out the Buzz, and then Talonflame comes in. and everything should be in range of the last Hyper Voice, and if not, just like a Hyper Voice, Dual Wing Beat or Flare Blitz probably gets there. The Dragonite is basically your Dondozo counter. These Pokemon can kind of have a rough time, so having the option to just haze away any setup sweepers. It's also good against Gholdengo, which can set up and deal pretty well with some of your Pokemon. Like Indeedee can't touch it that much. The Sneasler can, but they have to kind of read a Terrestrialization, but Redirection plus Gholdengo can be hard for this team if they get set up. So having the Talonflame to set up a Tailwind early on and then Dragonite to haze away any boosts after they have set that up is very nice for sure. Moving to the top 16 teams, again, not going to be going into too much detail. We have Kenneth Gamboa with a very hyper offensive team. It looks similar to a team that, I don't remember who did well with it. I think it was maybe Nails, but like a Mirror Herb Incineroar team. Kyle Livinghouse got top 4 at I think at Argentina Regionals with a team very similar to this, but overall the idea is you have Whimsicott as your Tailwind setter. We have an Ursaluna Blood Moon that pairs really well with the fake tiers on the Whimsicott. Annihilape is a really cool safety goggles coaching set with Final Gambit, as I mentioned before. You can coach up your Dragonite, which is again the Scale Shot set, which is really one of the most dominant Pokemon in the format right now due to its ability to knock out Sneasler in one hit. And then last up is an Archaludon, which is a stalwart Power Herb set, which can really mess up any redirection focused teams that are trying to set up. You can just go for a stalwart Terra Electric Power Herb Electroshot that'll knock out most Gholdengo and probably King Gambit, I imagine, or at least probably gets pretty close. And then after that, you can go for a Thunderbolt, and you're not tied to just having to hit Electroshot as your only form of stab on the Terra Electric type. Okay, next we have Edu's top 16 team. Edu, the previous World champion in 2022, so very accomplished player, one of the better Gholdengo players in the world, going with a triple fake out team here. We also have a coaching to set up the Dragonite and the Rillaboom as mentioned, and then a Ursaluna. Is that correct? Yeah, we have a Covert Cloak Ursaluna. Definitely, usually we'll see one of Gholdengo or Ursaluna on these sort of teams with a Follow Me supporter, but I do just going for both of them, which is cool. Yawn plus fake out cycling is definitely very difficult to navigate if you're not prepared to come into that game plan, so cool set there, opting away from Hyper Voice, just going for the strength of the Blood Moon, and the Earth Power, as well as a Covert Cloak set with Terra Electric to be immune to Fake Out, as well as Dire Claw, and also have the Terra Electric to kind of minimize your weaknesses. You don't really gain a lot of resistances, but, you know, it's an option. And then, yeah, as mentioned, we have a Fake Out Sneasler, Fake Out Rillaboom, and then Fake Out Incineroar with coaching on the Sneasler to boost up either the Rillaboom, which is high horsepower, which means that you have fairly strong coverage with the grass ground to be able to hit a lot of opponents. And then we have the Dragonite, which definitely benefits from the Scale Shot. It definitely is not Teleport Dragonite. We'll fix that right up. But yeah, most Dragonite have Extreme Speed or Haze in this Stomping Tantrum slot, but instead we have a Stomping Tantrum, which means that you can really just handle Gholdengo, which would otherwise be really any Steel type that tries to switch in onto the coached up Dragonite. They'll still take a lot from the Scale Shot, and then Stomping Tantrum as a follow-up should be enough for a knockout. Tailwind over Haze is interesting. You don't really have a whole lot to hard check Dondozo teams, like Gholdengo's pretty poor into it, but Dondozo, if you get it to -1, you can probably go for Terra Electric and live a Wave Crash. You have the Grassy Terrain up, then you'll live the Earthquake pretty easily, then you go for Yawn, and then with the combination of Incineroar and Rillaboom, all the Fake Out cycling and the Yawn, you should probably be able to beat it eventually with the Blood Moon and Earth Power, but I'd imagine that matchup might be a little bit trickier and dependent on the partner Pokemon to get that done. Next we have Brady's team, which is very similar to Edu's in certain ways. Do I have that Dragonite set right? That's kind of crazy. No, yeah, that is the Dragonite set. So Tailwind and Haze, no Protect. So just trying to get the best of both worlds, but no option for Protect. No coaching on the Sneasler, kind of surprising, but yeah, just a great coverage on the Dragonite. You can go for Tailwind to set up the Gholdengo if you have that set up early on. You have an Assault Vest Blood Moon, which can benefit from the maybe you could go 95 speed on this Ursaluna, but generally if you get the Tailwind up, you don't need to outspeed an opposing Sneasler. You can just go for a Scale Shot to knock it out. So not the craziest thing to not be running max speed on the Ursaluna. I mean, I made these spreads. I don't know. I'm trying to justify them as if they're the original spreads from the team, but yeah, the main difference between this and most common, they're called Doug teams, Dragonite, Ursaluna, Gholdengo, is the Amoonguss as a Follow Me Pokemon. I think Rillaboom is traditionally the more common Pokemon in these teams, but having the option for Spore can definitely throw some people's game plans off, as well as just having the ability to redirect. Definitely a strong option there. I think Justin Burns also had this team, but Brady and Justin played round 1 of day 2, and Brady eliminated Justin. So overall, a cool team. Congrats to them on a deep run at LAIC. Next up, we have Chongjun Pen and Justin Tang brought this team. A very interesting one. We have a Choice Specs Primarina, namely, along with a Tailwind Dragonite. Once again, no haze, but we have the Scale Shot Tailwind set, which can really set up the Primarina to do some crazy damage. This is, I don't know if this is Justin or Chongjun's exact spreads, but basically Shilang Tang posted this team on Twitter. With these EV spreads, typically they run the same teams at events. I think Shilang might have gotten a deep run in the Global Challenge too with this team, but we have the Arcanine, which is a very, I think when Incineroar gets added, everyone just forgets about Arcanine, but in a metagame where everyone is so slow, like Annihilape and Gholdengo are considered pretty fast, having something as fast as Arcanine to be able to outspeed them and knock them out with a Flare Blitz, in the case of Gholdengo, or a Will-O-Wisp in the case of Annihilape, is definitely very nice. There's also Dragonite, which you can intimidate, and Will-O-Wisp before they get a Scale Shot off. So overall, a lot of cool elements. I'd imagine Flare Blitz, or maybe even Extreme Speed into Terra Normal E-Speed might outspeed Sneasler, which is cool. So lots of cool things here. We have a Gholdengo, which is a bulky Terra Water Nasty Plot, plus a Leftover set, which with Aurora Veil can get pretty crazy. We also have an Encore Icy Wind support. Ninetales. Feels like the Choice Specs and the Nevermelt Ice Ninetales that were earlier on in the format are starting to die down as people just go for the bulk and longevity of the Aurora Veil, as well as the annoyance of the Encore and the Icy Wind. And last up, we have the Annihilape, which is a safety goggle set. Basically a catch-all to beat Ursaluna teams. It's really hard for those sort of teams to beat Terra Water Nasty Plot. Safety goggles, Annihilape, even the Charizard Torkoal ones, the Terra Water kind of covers for that. So overall, a great team from a group of great builders once again. Congrats on the deep runs at the regional, or at the LAIC. Now we have Lenduel's Tyranitar Corviknight Garchomp team. He's been using this Tyranitar Garchomp core since like probably 2010, honestly. Maybe 2012 if we're being conservative. But the Corviknight, definitely a new addition. It's really strong next to the Garchomp and Tyranitar. Didn't really get to show off that well on stream. I think Renzo played a really excellent set versus him in terms of controlling those Pokemon. And yeah, basically the idea is you have the Corviknight, which is really bulky, can set up Tailwind for an otherwise slow and bulky team. Tyranitar is running an absurdly, especially bulky set. People call this Lentar. I've probably run more non-special defense EVs than Len actually runs. I think he famously just runs 252 careful on the Tyranitar, but I have a little bit of speed to be able to outspeed Tyranitar and Charizard and Garchomp if you're able to get Tailwind up, which might not be necessary. I also put a little bit of EV spreads in the attack stat. I honestly think he might get diminishing returns after a certain point on the special defense stat, but hey, it's worked for Len so far, so if you want to, definitely just shake it up and run 252. Gholdengo is a choice spec set, which benefits from the Tailwind immensely. We have 2 Tailwind setters on the team, Killowattrel and the Corviknight. Killowattrel with Volt Absorb here, not competitive, which is kind of interesting. I feel like there's not much electric coverage in the format, so it wouldn't be crazy to be running the competitive. Maybe I messed this up, but I think I just took this directly from the open team sheet, so whatever. You do have a very high special attack stat, 105, and an incredibly high speed stat. You'll outspeed a Jumpluff outside of Sun. And with Tyranitar as a potential switch in, it's definitely super viable to accomplish that. Basically just knock it out with an Air Slash. You might not knock it out unless you go for Terra Stellar, but that is probably why it's there. Garchomp is a bulky leftover substitute set with Sandveil and Sand active. Your opponent only has an 80% chance to hit you, which is definitely very annoying, especially if they're running an inaccurate move like a 90% move, then it's suddenly 72% chance to hit you, which is rough. And then last Pokemon on the team is the Dragonite, which is a Terra Stellar, or not Dragonite, a Dragapult. A Life Orb special Dragapult with Terra Stellar is doing crazy damage. Most people are expecting to be able to deal with a Dragapult's physical attacks, but having the option for the immediate ghost coverage, don't have to go for Phantom Force, and the immediate single target dragon coverage that is not as inconsistent as Outrage can definitely throw some opponents off. I imagine this is a pretty specific matchup mon, because I don't think we've really seen any Infiltrator, Terra Stellar, Life Orb, Dragapult this format, except for, we saw a Choice Specs one do well at the first American Regional, but yeah, overall a cool team from Len. Congrats to him on a deep finish once again. He's really done quite well in Scarlet and Violet with the Corviknight, Tyranitar, Garchomp, definitely a core that appreciates the terrestrialization mechanic. Next, we have Kylan Van Severin. I think they got top 8, maybe top 16 at the World Championship this year, famously beating Wolf in a close set, but overall, cool Dondozo team where Terra Steel, Covert Cloak, so you can't go for the fake out haze stuff, which a lot of teams are relying on to basically you have a fake out Rillaboom or a Incineroar or even a Sneasler next to a Haze Dragonite and you just go for the fake out and haze, and even if you have a bit of damage on your Dragonite, you'll just be able to haze them and take away all their boosts and then not have to face the Order Up or Heavy Slam knockout. But with the Covert Cloak, that's not an option. You have to get the Scale Shot up at some point to be able to haze away the Dondozo. So that's a cool bit of counterplay there. Tatsugiri is pretty standard, a Focus Sash taunt set. Annihilape is Safety Goggles Bulk Up. So this is, I'm not entirely sure, this seems kind of out of place to me. I really do like the Coaching's Choice Scarf set in these sort of teams, but kind of going for a bit more consistent of a bulk up set to maybe beat balanced teams or people trying to bring in Incineroar to beat the Dondozo. But yeah, outside of that, a support Volcarona with Tailwind, Struggle Bug, Heat Wave, and Will-O-Wisp. And this can handle, I mean, you're not going to take that much from a Sneasler with all these defensive EVs. You're able to outspeed in a Will-O-Wisp and Annihilape, Heat Wave a Gholdengo, or Struggle Bug a Archaldon, or, you know, any of those sort of Pokemon. So that's pretty cool. Probably better into the Rain matchup outside of Basculegion than you would expect. And even with Terra Water, they're risking taking a Flame Body while still not knocking you out. So that's pretty cool. You have a Dragonite to deal with other Dondozos in the mirror or other setup Pokemon to haze them away. You are unaware, so I imagine other setup Pokemon aren't that scary, so the haze is most likely just for opposing Dondozo to win in the mirror. And then the Archaldon pairs really well with the Tailwind and Rage Powder Volcarona. You're pretty safely able to go for a Power Herb Electroshock, get boosted up, and then deal tons of damage with Flash Cannon and Draco Meteor. And you have Terra Grass to be able to ignore redirection teams like Rage Powder Jumpluff or Rage Powder Amoonguss on the Ursaluna teams. Next, we have a fairly standard pair of Rain teams that round out the top 16. We have Francesco Piopero, I think is his name, brought basically the same team that Marco was able to get, I want to say top 16. Maybe it was deeper at Lyle Regional. Archaldon, Terra Grass, fairly standard set, no Snarl, but we have Flash Cannon, that's notable. Terra Stellar, Tailwind, Pelipper, pretty common. And then instead of a Choice Band or a Choice Scarf Basculegion, we have a Splash Plate Swift Swim one. So going for a little bit more consistency and less self-damage with the Splash Plate, and then having Protect so you don't have to... I mean, it's just one more weapon against the Sucker Punch Mind Games or the Grassy Glides that Rillabooms will try and threaten you with early on. They might be less inclined to go for that if you have the option to go for Protect and just nullify their turn entirely. Terra Fairy Amoonguss, I think, is quite strong. These teams can struggle against the volatility of Sucker Punch King Gambit with Swords Dance and a Follow Me Pokemon or even Rillaboom. So having the Amoonguss to kind of just mitigate that with Terra Fairy, Rage Powder against the King Gambit is nice for sure. And then a setup Gholdengo as Marco had, and then a Safety Goggles Incineroar. So not much more to comment on there. And then Zine, Shohei Kimura got the last slot in the top 16 with a Choice Band Swift Swim Basculegion, a little bit more standard. Again, the Gholdengo, Pelipper, Archaldon, running Bug Terra here, so not really that worried about the Amoongusses or Sleep Powders in general, given that you have the Gholdengo to cover for that. A lot of people have differing opinions on how, how much you should respect Amoonguss. I'm in the camp of respecting it a bit more, but when the gain you get is that a Sneasler can go for close combat into a Terra... Basically, a Sneasler can safely go for close combat into a Terra Grass Archaldon, and then if they've gone for Terra Stellar, follow up the next turn with a Dire Claw KO. That option is not on the table against Terra Bug Archaldon, because if you go for Terra Bug, you'll resist the close combat, and then Dire Claw will be neutral, you won't be nearly in range for a knockout, so that's a cool option there. Last up is once again the Terra Fairy Amoonguss, so not much to say about that. And then I do have a couple of teams from the top 32 that I basically just had from the previous regionals. Fede Campo ran back his Gdansk with the basically the Archaldon Loaded Dice Stamina Rain team, and then Michael Derbesti brought the same exact Magmar King Gambit Dragapult team that he's been running the tables with in Europe and was able to get a top 32 here before losing there. So overall, hope you guys enjoyed the resource of these teams. Hopefully it makes testing for your upcoming events or even just online tournaments a little bit easier, not having to go through the trouble of making all the V spreads, which I will have in the description below. Not sure I'd mentioned that earlier, but yeah, let me know what other teams you want to see featured on the channel. Subscribe if you enjoyed the resource, and with all that being said, peace y'all.